1970 Welcome everybody to Off the Cuff. I am Adam Banks. Thank you for listening to the show. Coming at you live from the Waterstone Studio here in Lexington, Kentucky. Today in the studio, I have Mr. Dan Pauley, host of Friends in the Corner podcast. If you don't recognize that name, just head on over to the archives of the podcast and listen to the last episode I did called Friends in the Corner Interview, and that's where you can listen to the entire interview I did on Friends in the Corner podcast with Dan Pauley. He hosts his own show, and it's a new podcast here in Lexington. He is only on 2 episodes at the moment, and episode 3 comes out later this week, so he is on the podcast to promote his new show and his new episode coming up this week. So I don't want to take any more time. I did a great interview with Dan, and I got to sit down with him here in the Waterstone studio and record a nice little interview one-on-one that I did with him. And not only do we talk about his podcasting career, but we talk about current events, because that's what we do here on Off the Cuff, and we hear Dan's take on a lot of things. So sit back, relax, and listen to the one-on-one interview I did with Dan Pauley from Friends in the Corner. All right, live in the Waterstone studio, I have Mr. Dan Pauley, the host of the newest podcast on the block, Friends in the Corner. Mr. Dan Pauley, how's it going, sir?
It's going wonderful, Adam. How's it going with you, man?
Man, it's going great, and I feel like that I should have rolled out the red carpet for you when you got into the studio, because you are the hottest thing now in Lexington.
Well, I don't know about that, but we're trying every day. You know, I was on you're on my podcast a few weeks ago. Now I'm coming on yours. I feel like this came full circle. So.
I know. We said we were going to do a crossover.
Yeah.
And now we're doing a crossover. And I'm really liking what you're doing with your show. I do. I like the whole concept of it. I like the fact that you are having a different person on every episode. Yeah. You're talking to different people, interesting people, which was great, because I was apparently an interesting person.
Hey, you're at one of the top of my list, my friend.
Thanks, man. How's the views? I'm wondering, is the views pretty good for that episode with me on there?
I can say right now that you are the number 2 most listened to episode on our podcast.
And how many episodes do you have?
2.
So
Max has got a lot of friends and followers. I apologize, my brother.
No, I can understand that. He is the host of Big Blue Chalk
BBN
Talk.
Chalk Talk.
Yeah,
no, not Big Blue, just BBN Chalk Talk.
BBN.
So,
okay. Yeah. And he also played football at Kentucky.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's got a little extra baggage to carry more than me. But yeah, I like what you're doing, Dan. So Friends in the Corner podcast. Let's talk about that for just a few minutes. Where did the desire to start a podcast come from you?
Oh man, this is a long story. So just buckle in, everybody. I'm a bit of a polar when it comes to these stories.
Okay, we're ready for the ride to listen.
Right. Well, just as long as I can remember, I was always finding different ways to have creative avenues, and I'm a true millennial.
Yeah,
I was like, I can always figure out how to do different multimedia. When I was in high school, I was big into film. I was part of these video classes, and we had this one video class that I took 4 times.
Yeah.
Not because I failed it, but because I just kept doing it, and Centerville High School, where I graduated from, didn't say anything. So,
you liked the class so much you kept taking it.
Yeah, and people looked at my transcript. It was funny. A college that I was applying to looked at my transcript. They're like, you took this videography course 4 times, but you got an A in it. Why'd you keep doing it? It's like, because it's the only video class I could take. So I went to film school for a little bit, and long story short, film school didn't work out. But eventually I did transfer over to UK, and I did blogging for a little bit. So I was in a Christian ministry for a while. I wrote Christian blogs for people. I also did video editing for Christian Student Fellowship over at UK when I was over at that camp over in college. So I still had just my hands in this multimedia stuff. And then I was actually part of a podcast for a little bit of time. So the one we just mentioned, BBN Chalk Talk, I was their producer for a season. It was with Mr. Max Gabi, one of my best friends, Matt Smith and Greg Lyle. Good guys over there. You should definitely check out their podcast. But when I got done with them after that season, I loved it. It was a lot of fun. It was a good ride. But I didn't feel like I was really enjoying what I was talking about. I love UK sports, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit. But I wanted to do a little bit more, and I didn't think at the end of that season if it was something I wanted to continue on with. So Max, Greg, and Matt all continue on to go do the podcast, and they got sponsors and are finally getting paid for it, those jerks. So, but
yeah. So you had this idea that you wanted to. So it stemmed from blogging.
It stemmed from blogging, stemmed from doing videos and stuff. That podcasting just became something, another avenue about that, because I've done all this stuff, and then I found this out, and I was listening to podcasts for a couple of years now. So, and we talk about this a little bit here. I'm a huge wrestling fan.
Right. Same here.
Yeah, sir.
Oh, same here. Very much so.
We had some great conversations on my podcast about that.
What years did you watch wrestling?
So I entered in at a weird time. It was 2004 post Attitude Era. So I missed Stone Cold. I missed The Rock. Yeah,
you missed like the golden age of wrestling.
I grew up on the rise of John Cena,
unfortunately. And Randy Orton. Those guys. That's funny, Dan. 2004 was the year I stopped watching. So it's like, I don't know. Yeah, you definitely started watching at a very odd time in wrestling.
I mean, I did have some fun guys. Eddie Guerrero, Shawn Michaels. Those guys were good.
Oh yeah, I mean they were in their prime back when I watched it. But yeah, they were still getting around and doing their thing.
But back to the podcasting. Two of my favorite podcasts I listen to this day are Something to Wrestle With.
I love that. With Bruce Pritchard and Conrad Thompson.
Conrad Thompson. Yes. And Talk is Jericho.
Talk is Jericho.
Chris Jericho's podcast.
Man, that Bruce Pritchard podcast is like 3 hours long.
Oh, I know.
But every word of it, I am just hanging on to
it. He's a genius of the wrestling business.
He is.
You just sit there. I even like pro wrestlers talk about how a lot of what they learn is just from listening to that podcast.
Right.
So.
Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard is on iTunes. I recommend that podcast for any wrestling fan. If you are somebody that is a wrestling fan and you definitely watched it back when I watched it, the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
Because they talk a lot about the Attitude Era.
Yes.
When you listen to Something to Wrestle With, it tells behind-the-scenes stories of what went on during that time.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the interesting part of that podcast. And so if you're a wrestling fan, you'll get a kick out of it. So, so you listen to podcasts, you listen to Something to Wrestle With.
Comedy podcasts. Have you ever heard of The Dollop?
No, I have not.
Dollop is a great podcast, too, for people that are looking for something funny. It's these two comedians that sit at a table. One guy knows his history, knows these stories from history. The other guy knows nothing. So he's just sharing these stories with his buddy and getting these reactions at him. And there's stuff like they talk about, like 10-cent beer night at a Cleveland Indians game where fans got wild. And Otto in the Attic, one you should definitely check out, one of my favorites. I'm just going to let you guys search that one out for yourself. But podcasts like those are what influenced me to kind of get into it. And so I left BB and Chalk Talk, and I sat on the idea of doing a podcast for about a year and a half.
Okay.
I knew, it's funny, I told people, I knew exactly how I wanted to roll it out. Yeah. I knew what equipment I needed. I knew how it was going to be put on, where I knew it was going to be on iTunes, I knew it was going to be on Stitchers and YouTube.
Yeah.
I didn't have a name picked out at the time, but I didn't know but I just knew how I was going to do it. I just didn't know when. I didn't know what I was going to talk about.
Yeah.
And up until this past year, I tell myself I finally just gained the confidence to finally just say, all right, are we allowed to cuss on this podcast?
Yeah, we can.
Fuck it.
You're going to do it.
Let's just put something out there.
And you did it.
Yeah.
And I was telling you at the beginning of the podcast, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I really do think that you are going to be successful with this podcast. Now, is this a podcast where every episode you're going to have a guest?
Starting off, yes, that's what we're looking at
doing.
And for the foreseeable future, that's what we are doing. When I launched the podcast, I wasn't exactly sure, as I was mentioning to you, what content I was going to put out there. So a few ideas ran through my head. Since I'm influenced by wrestling, I thought, let's do a wrestling podcast. But there are a lot of different wrestling podcasts out there. And for those of you who are looking for some, he mentioned Bruce Pritchard, Talk is Jericho.
The Steve Austin.
One of my favorites is out of Sacramento. It's called Going in Raw with Steven Larson.
What a name.
Yeah, it's going. Yeah. So
Steve Larson, who is that?
Steve and Larson. They're two guys.
Now, was Steve and Larson, were they?
They're just fans. And
Okay.
They just started a podcast in Sacramento, and they do a really good job with it. Cultaholic, they're a group out of UK. I listen to their stuff too. But so wrestling was an idea, but I knew there was a lot of people that did wrestling podcasts. I thought UK. We just were talking about this offline here.
Yeah.
I wanted to think about maybe doing a UK podcast.
Right.
But every
Tom, Dick, and Harry has a UK podcast. Yeah, I mean, they do. So I'm glad that you, and I thanked you off the air. I said, thank you for not doing a UK podcast. I don't do a UK podcast. Off the Cuff will never be a sole UK podcast. It will always be a show about current events, pop culture, and things going on, and special guests from time to time. But the thing I love when I have guests come on Off the Cuff, but the thing that I want to ask you is, how do you think you'll sustain a guest every single episode if you plan on opening an episode every single week? Do you plan on having an interview every week? What happens when you don't score an interview? What do you plan on doing to have a filler for your episode?
So we've got a few ideas in the grapevine right now, in the wait. I'm gonna keep those close to my chest for people to start listening to.
Yeah, I love the reveals. Like I love the suspense too with your episodes. Like that you have to wait to see who's going to be on it, and then you release who's going to be on it, and you don't let us hear it because I want to listen to it right then when you post the picture of who's going to be on your next show. I'm like, man, I want to listen to it.
Yeah, when I put Adam Banks' face right up there with a little blue slab that says Adam Banks from Off the Cuff is coming on this week.
Hundreds of thousands of women just lit up your phone and was like, when is this coming out?
So, kind of rolling back into what you're saying here, the one thing that I felt like was going to make this podcast a success for me was to focus on the Lexington community. I've been here 8 years. I've loved every minute of living here. And the one thing that I can say about Lexington more than any other city I've ever been to is the community connection, the community involvement is very powerful here. Like, you can go around town, people know small businesses. Yeah. Small businesses are doing impacts here. People know there's some many celebrities here in town, like Mr. Adam Banks from Off the Cuff.
Yeah, right. I see what you're saying. People know who the news anchors are.
Yeah.
They know who the weathermen are, the sports casters.
They know who Cal is. And so I'm doing those interviews to try to highlight those people that I think are making an influence here in Lexington and trying to get their stories out. So that's how we're starting off. Obviously, you mentioned, how do you keep that sustainable? You probably can't, because even if I was able to successfully interview every single person I wanted to interview here on my podcast, in about 2 years, I'll probably run out of people.
Yeah, unless you brought him back on for a second.
Unless I brought him on and be like, hey, what's up? Remember Adam Banks from a year ago? I was like, he's back with more content now.
I mean, because you got to think, people like Letterman and Leno, I guess that's old school. People like Fallon and Stephen Colbert, they interview people every single day, but you've got to understand that they're interviewing the same people over and over and over. Like, they've interviewed Will Smith 50,000 times.
Right.
So
you've heard the same stuff, and those guys always have new content released. So all I can say is we do got some ideas down the pipeline here we're going to put out. I think are going to be fun. Hopefully other people think they're fun too. If not, we'll go back to the drawing board and we're going to find content that people are going to love, and we're going to put that out there. So literally, I read this quote before I started the podcast, and I thought it was the best way to do it, because I was what stopped me from doing the podcast for a year and a half was, concerned people in like the podcast. And then this quote came across my Twitter by the late Carrie Fisher, and it said, "Stay afraid, but do it anyways. What's important is action. You don't have to wait to be confident. Just do it, and eventually the confidence will follow."
I love that.
Yes.
I love that.
That's kind of been my motto with this podcast. I could have started this podcast and been a total failure, and everyone could have cussed me out and said, "You suck, don't ever do a podcast again." But I've done it, and by the grace of God and my own ethics, or hopefully just by having good quality guests on the podcast so far, it's been a success, and I'm very happy with that.
And we're all looking forward to it. So your next episode, I want you to promote it. You got DJ
Otis Badass from WK2Q and from Prime Time Wrestling in Paris, Kentucky at the PTW Sportsatorium. That's exactly how he talks, man. what an interview with that guy. So
A lot of energy, right?
A lot of energy. And what I can say is, because he was on, I met him, well, I didn't meet him. I heard of him through BBN Shock Talk because he was on their show a while back. And I just reached out to him on Twitter and I was like, hey, man, I'm a big fan of your work. I follow you on Twitter. I'm buddies with the BBN Shock Talk guys. Love to do an interview. And he sent me back like, sure, man. And I was just thinking, he's just going to be some dude I interview and it's either going to be good or great. But he invited me actually to the iHeartRadio studio down there on Nicholasville Road. And when we got there, I introduced himself and I was talking to him. And I was talking about recording, and he's like, well, let's do this. Why don't we go into the studio here and record it on this good quality stuff? Because I've got a good system, but we're in iHeartRadio studios there.
Yes.
It's very nice.
That's awesome. So he lets you use his equipment.
Let me use this equipment. Not only that, but we use the same room they record KSR in.
Really?
Yes.
In the WLAP studio?
Yep. So a big old KSR helmet just sitting there on the wall. And, man, Otis, he just talked wrestling. We talked more stuff off the air, but the best part was, and I want more guests like this. When I got to the point where I felt like I had enough content, and I was like, all right, Otis, you've answered all my questions. He just said, well, what else do you got for me? Talk to me more. I want to talk wrestling all night. And we literally, we had enough for 2 episodes with that podcast.
Yeah.
There. So that comes out this week. You all should check it out. Follow DJ Otis Badass on Twitter at DJ Otis Badass. He is a bottle of fun. I can just say that. What a guy.
Yeah, and also tell everybody about what you plan on doing with the leftover things that had to be cut out on the cutting floor. You plan on kind of having a little off the air,
So
extra footage.
So the following week, what I want to start doing, because I could put out podcast interviews. Every week if I wanted to by this point.
Yes.
And this kind of goes back to your question here is like, what do you do to keep that fresh and interesting and stuff like that? For the last week of the month, and this might change differently when there's 5 weeks or whatever. Which next week will be the last week of the month. We're going to do a YouTube exclusive. And it's going to be different every week, but this upcoming week, what I'm going to do is you're going to hear what you didn't hear in the last 3 podcasts I did. So we had great interviews, 3 amazing interviews with Max Godby, DJ Otis Badass, and of course Mr. Adam Banks from Off the Cuff here. And some stuff just didn't make it into the final product.
Yeah.
And there's still some good stuff in those interviews. And so what we're going to do is we're going to splice those up, add them all together, and let you guys hear the unheard footage from those 3 podcasts that I did with those 3 guests. And I hope you enjoy it. It will be a YouTube exclusive. You can only find it on YouTube. But I hope you enjoy it while we put it out there for you guys.
I'm excited. Mm-hmm. I'm really excited. So I just want to tell everybody, I'm not just going to say if you want to, do it. Please do it. Go to Friends in the Corner. You can follow them on all social media outlets. It looks like Twitter, FITC Podcast, Instagram at FITC Podcast, and Facebook, fb.me/FTICP.
If you type in Friends in the Corner in the little search bar, you'll find us up there. Don't you worry about that.
Yes, you will.
We'll make sure we find you.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. It's a clever name. Nobody has it. So, it's great. I'm excited.
Yeah, I've been pretty happy with the response I've gotten back from the name. So it's been a good one. And I can't take credit for the name of the podcast, unfortunately. So
why not? Where did Friends in the Corner come from?
Well, it's funny because I feel like when you ask people when they get a title for a show, there's like some deep meaning behind it.
Yeah.
There's none with this. I blatantly stole it from a buddy of mine. So what happened was I was at a wedding. I was in a wedding last month. And I had the idea of doing a podcast by that point, Lon. I knew I was going to do it. I just didn't have a name. And we were in this wedding. We were at the rehearsal dinner, and the bride was trying to get the attention of her orchestra band that was playing during the ceremony. So she yells across the room, "Friends in the Corner," and gets their attention. And my buddy Sam Holmes, who's a pastor up in Dayton, Ohio, leaned over to me and said, "Man, that would be a good name for a podcast." And I said, "No, that would suck. No one wants to do that." needless to know, I typed it in the back of my phone and left it there for a day. So
I love the honesty, and you're like, that's a great name.
Yeah.
I'm stealing it.
Hey, Sam's got enough going for him now. He's going to be a dad here next month, so I need some credit right now in my life. But
great names are hard to come by, and I tell you what, Dan, you say you need credit. The podcast will become your child. It will become your baby, and you will protect it. And if you ever decide to let a co-host come on your show, protect it. Don't let them take it over. Remember, you're the host.
Right.
Don't let them take that mic from you. Share the mic, but don't let them take it, because sometimes you run into that.
Yeah.
And people will always be jealous, regardless of how much in their face they'll be. Oh, I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you. I'm doing this. Watch out for jealous people. I think jealousy is the tackiest quality anyone could ever have. I hate it. And I think that's why I never have a problem with promoting other people, because I love the fact that everybody's doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And I tell people this all the time. You and me can get up and tell the same exact story, but we're going to tell it two different ways.
Right.
So that's how this podcast and my podcast is. We can interview the same person, but it's going to be two different interviews.
Exactly. And that's what I hope. I mean, and like I was kind of saying with Lexington here is, above any other community I've ever been a part of, it feels like it's a community that wants to help each other out.
Yeah.
And at least that's my experience been so far. Obviously, I wanted to promote your show. You're promoting mine. I wanted to promote Max's show. He's promoting mine. And just keep going that way, because I think we're just trying to all make it, right?
We're all just trying to make it. And yes, I think you make a very valid point about people in Lexington that try to just help each other out, go on each other's shows, retweet each other on Twitter, share each other's posts. And it always makes you feel good. It's always nice when people do that. I remember when I did an interview with, I think, Brad Calipari one time, and then Ryan Lemon.
Yeah.
A lot of people Oscar Combs, he retweeted one of my interviews with Brad Calipari, and that just meant so much to me. Yeah. I mean, that meant a lot when he tweeted to me and he was like, great stuff from this podcast called Off the Cuff. From Oscar Combs. And when you're a little kid from Kentucky that grew up watching Kentucky, it don't matter how old you get when you get somebody like Oscar retweeting you.
Right.
And it was great. So you will see a lot of that. But here on the show, man, we talk about things going on in the world. We talk about things that are happening, hot topics, current events. And I just took a few current events that was happening around the world, and I just want to talk about them. And it's always nice to have someone on the show just to banter with, someone to feed off of. So kind of how this rose is I'll bring up a topic and we just talk about it.
Okay.
So the first topic I think is going to be great to banter with you over, because we both have day jobs. Right. We both do other things outside of this podcast world. We both work in higher education. You work in recruiting. I work in teaching. And we both kind of have been in the trenches in higher ed too. We've not always been in the positions that we're at now. So we've had to work our way up to where we're at.
Claw and scratch just to make it.
And, we're older. I'm 30. You are how old?
I'm 27.
So you're 27. And you're now at that age, because we're pretty much the same age.
Yeah.
Okay.
Give or take a few beers.
Give or take, yes. You're now at that age to where you have started at the main bottom of the corporate ladder, and you're not at the top, but you're climbing it.
Right.
You're climbing it. And sometimes things can happen to people in the workforce, like sexual harassment. And I'm not saying that this has ever happened to you, but you certainly can acknowledge that it does happen. And a lot of people think that it just happens to women, hence this Me Too movement that has just swept the nation. Women coming forward left and right saying they have been sexually harassed in the workforce. But now people are starting to say, wait a minute, this Me Too movement is for everyone. It's for men too. And I've done episodes on this before. I've talked about sexual harassment in the workplace from men. Men getting sexually harassed by women. And by some men, I'm sure it happens. But women who sexually harass men. And it's such a taboo that nobody talks about it. So I'm not saying that you have ever been sexually harassed, or maybe you have. But can you acknowledge, or can you agree with me to say that you think that there are men out there who have been sexually harassed in the workforce?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely agree with that there are men that have been sexually harassed in the workforce. And do I think that it happens just as much as women? I wouldn't say that. I still think, women still get it more than the
brunt
men. Yeah, the brunt of it. But no, I definitely agree that I mean, look what happened last year when all that stuff came out with Kevin Spacey.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Shocks. It just sends shockwaves to you, yeah. Well, you hear about all of the stuff coming out of people that you watch on TV a lot. Matt Lauer, Ryan Seacrest, even Tom Brokaw. They even tried to say Tom Brokaw was smacked a woman's ass in like 1997. And so many women are coming forward. Bill Cosby, all of these people that they worked with were sexually harassing them. And you heard about the whole Matt Lauer thing, right? Matt Lauer, the host of the Today Show, he basically had a button at his desk, Dan, okay? And he had a button that when women would walk into his office, he would hit this button and his door would shut.
Oh my God.
And he would tell women to do things with him as the door was shut. So, I mean, it was that bad. But he went down for it. And it's just people that shock you. But yeah, it happens more to women. You do. But it happens to men too.
Yeah.
And I think that there are a lot of men that have this happen to them and they won't come forward because they feel embarrassed. They feel like less of a man if they come forward and say, oh, I got hit on by a woman and I didn't like it. Not saying that you didn't like it, but men are not pieces of meat either. Men are not just people that you can just whistle at walking by the street. Everybody wants to get so frustrated when a woman's walking by and a construction worker will whistle at her. Well, sometimes men don't want to deal with that either. Have to deal, they feel violated. Right. So with this Me Too movement going on, I think that I'm finally glad that they are starting to acknowledge that men are getting some of the brunt too. Okay, so I'm just happy that it's finally happening.
And you were at your mentioning that you don't know if I've ever been sexually harassed, and I can say that in my experience, I've never been sexually harassed in the workplace. I've experienced abuse of power. Yeah. Definitely people keeping you down or and all that stuff. So I've seen that type of stuff.
Do you think it was because you were a man they were keeping you down? Do you think it was anything to do with your gender?
I think they just didn't like me. Yeah, so I pissed the wrong person off. So here's what my kind of point is, my belief. In 2008, we should be at a point where respect isn't a privilege in the workplace. But for just being human in a human environment, that should be a priority for employers to look at that. I had this nice quote all written out here. Sorry, I'm a little more correct here. But I mean, just for being human, whether you're men or women, black or white, gay, straight, or trans, that should be the utmost priority. But I'm hoping we get to that point, God willing. It doesn't seem that way in certain situations, but that's just my my expectation when I go into an employer is that they respect me as an employee. And I've left, a couple years ago, I had an opportunity to move up in a job in a organization that loved me and was willing to top me up and put me at this big spot, but I didn't feel like the employer had my best interest in mind. So I left that company, and then a couple years later, other people started leaving too because they felt the same way. Yeah. So, I just think this is the millennial in me. Yeah. I feel like I want to be respected. In a workplace. Yeah. Like you were talking about, and on all aspects. Yeah.
For me, I kind of feel like that I was in a situation to where I was being sexually harassed. I was at a job, and there was this woman who was my supervisor, and this was nobody that you know, and this is nobody, probably anybody knows. This was a long time ago, and this was not even in the city of Lexington. And she was my quote-unquote supervisor, and she had a crush on me. My supervisor. And my supervisor was not a very attractive woman, God bless her heart. And she wanted to sleep with me. It was obvious. She had made passes. She had flirted. It was known. One, that's sexual harassment. Your employer shouldn't know that, hey, the supervisor wants to sleep with you. No. So right there, that's already hot water that I'm swimming in right there. So she flirted with me kind of inappropriately. I never really flirted with her back. I wasn't attracted to her. She was, God bless her heart, like I said, she was not very attractive. But one day I had to stay all night at her house because of a event that lasted too long, and I lived a while away from home from where we were at. So I stayed all night at her house, and that was the night that I think she wanted things to go down. Things did not go down, and ever since then, it was hell at work. I mean, my hours changed, my schedule changed, things were just different. I had extra work. I was getting supervised, looked upon more. Things just changed, and it was because I didn't sleep with her. So I never reported it. It's not like I felt like I even had an opportunity to report it because I was like, well, men don't report stuff like that. But I wish I would have now because it wasn't fair. And I came out on top because I still ended up in the job that I want to be in. But it really could have affected my career. Yeah. So I'm just glad now that the Me Too movement has shifted over to it's everybody's movement. It's not just women. It's everybody. Right. It's men getting sexually harassed.
I agree with that too. Is like I think people should be held accountable. People in power should be held accountable for their actions, whatever those actions might be. So, hopefully that makes some change and makes some moves towards better etiquette in the workforce and stuff like that.
Yeah, so, people should be held accountable for the things that they do.
On both ends,
on both ends,
both genders and everything. Yes,
on both ends, yeah. And that includes anything that comes out of someone's mouth. So bullying, like if you bully somebody, that is inappropriate. There's one thing I can't stand, Dan, is when somebody is a bully. I hate it when somebody bullies. And people say our president likes to bully people. He likes to bully people on social media. He likes to bully people on the news outlets. And he bullies people. And it's kind of ironic that the First Lady, his wife, Melania Trump, is doing a campaign on anti-bullying.
Anti-cyberbullying.
Let's be more specific, which is exactly what her husband, President Donald Trump, is always out there doing.
If you are living under a rock, you've never seen... Yeah, I'm sure everyone's by this point has seen some tweet of Donald Trump. He loves Twitter, so...
He does.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump is always on my 10 most fascinating people list of 2000, whatever year it is, because I have one of those episodes every year. And Trump is always on it. I'm like, how can Trump not be fascinating? He is always in the news. And it's because of his damn Twitter.
Yeah.
He needs to shut that off. But I think it's ironic that his wife is trying to prevent cyberbullying. How has... Nobody called that out, or anybody said, this is crazy.
Well, and that's just some articles I found. How true it is, who knows? There was mention that Trump was trying to persuade her to take up a different approach to an issue. I don't know how true that is. By this point in time, it's hard to tell which news outlets are telling the truth and which ones are blowing smoke up your ass. But to be honest with you, either everyone hates Trump or everyone loves Trump. But
I think that she's the First Ladies. They have to do something.
Yeah.
They don't really have an important job.
Yeah.
The First Lady has no power,
right.
And they always traditionally every single president, their wife has some type of philanthropy.
Yeah.
Their cause, and hers is cyberbullying. And it's like Alanis Morissette said it's ironic. I know you've heard that song.
Yeah.
By Alanis Morissette. It's ironic that she's doing cyberbullying, and not many people are calling it out. But I think she's got a kind heart. I've seen her in action. I've seen her in interviews and reading to kids and stuff like that. But where do you think that derived from? That passion of wanting to prevent cyberbullying? Do you think her son receives it, or do you think it's a silent yell saying, "Help, my husband is a cyberbully"?
Man, it's hard to tell. I don't know a whole lot about Melania. I can be honest with you. I think maybe she does get a lot of negative recognition because of who she's married to.
Yeah.
And I mean, you hear stuff in the news all the time. You look at her son and people are like, oh, her son doesn't look all that right. Or, maybe this is just a yell to say, I'm stuck with this guy. But it's hard to tell where this came from. It's very left ball, very out of field. It's hard to tell like why this is the issue she's sticking up for. But it is fascinating. Even if you take the big old orange tweeting elephant out of the room.
Yeah.
And you just focus on just the campaign she's doing and stuff like that. I think it's a good overall. I think it is a good thing to go after. Cyberbullying. I mean, it's an issue that we do see in schools. But in my day job, I go into schools all the time. I've been in almost every high school here in Lexington, and bullying is an issue. But there's a lot of issues in the schools right now.
Yeah.
Too. So it's like if it works and she's able to, help, shed light on this stuff, great. But it's a very interesting advocate for
it.
This. Yes.
Yeah, it's just, to me, I think it's a great cause. I think that somebody needs to go out and do it.
Right.
And I wonder like how she's going to be able to reach.
Yeah.
How she's going to be able to connect.
I don't think her husband's habits help her with her campaign at all.
No. I think that just goes to show how irrelevant a first lady is. It's not, I mean, okay, I say that by just the title first lady. Yeah, she should be respected as his wife.
Right.
But her job duties is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. She's just doing it. It's a philanthropy, and she has a team of people working for her.
Well, and there were other parts of this campaign she's got. She's also focusing on the care of children and focusing on opioid addiction.
Yeah.
I think focusing on those would have been more. I mean, still focus on cyberbullying, but I think touting that a little bit more specifically, those areas, and advocating for those areas may help her a little bit better than just letting the focus be on cyberbullying. Not that she shouldn't be promoting, campaigning for anti-cyberbullying, but figuring out what's going to be your best influence.
Yeah, I agree. So it's something that she should be addressed. It's just an interesting advocate.
Good luck to her. Now, does she have like a program set up, or is she literally just going to schools and giving a Who Wrote Out campaign?
I don't know what she's actually pushing to help solve cyberbullying. I think she's just trying to spread love and kindness.
Okay. That's what I was wondering. Is like, everything I saw, I didn't see like she's setting up a program in schools or anything like that. From what I've seen, she's just going to schools and doing a speech, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's cool, but there's only so much you can do in a 20-minute speech compared to like a lifetime.
To me, I feel like someone should do something that hits home with them.
Yeah.
That means you're passionate about it. I don't see her having this issue something to hit home with her. She's obviously beautiful. She's a supermodel, and she's always been wealthy, and she's a multi-billionaire now. And I don't know how good this
campaign is.
This campaign is for her. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, for the sake of what she's approaching for, hopefully it helps. Hopefully it makes an impact, because it is a good issue to be going after, but good luck to you. Good luck to you, Melania.
2020 is going to be the year where this country is more divided than any other time in American history, I feel like.
I can agree with that.
It's going to be Team Trump or Team
whoever they put up on that pedestal there.
For the Democrats, you're right.
And I don't dig into politics too much here, but I can say that it's been a very fascinating time for me living in America the last couple of years, just to see what's going on and stuff like that. And we talk about unity in our community and stuff like that, but oh boy, it's like every time you see a new tweet from Donald Trump, you're like, All right. Well, we'll see how this goes down.
Yeah, and he's going to demolish his opponent in 2020. Like, as far as not beat him, I'm saying he's going to beat him down in words and social media tweets and just
going to cyberbully the hell out of him.
And yeah, and the thing about it is he's got the money to dig deep and to find anything out he wants to about his opponent. I really give it to the person who runs against Trump in 2020.
Yeah, good luck to you, man. So, unlimited bank. Ooh,
that's hard.
Who do you think? Do you think they have a candidate in mind, Democrats?
That's interesting. I don't know. I used to say that the Democrats was going to put in Elizabeth Warren. I don't know. That would be terrible.
Yeah, I like Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah,
but she tries to match Trump's game on Twitter a lot. I follow Elizabeth Warren, and it's kind of the same problem. And she bickers with him on Twitter.
I've heard a couple people. I've heard Oprah. I've heard Oprah. I've heard
The Rock.
I've heard Dwayne The Rock Johnson was running, which would be amazing. I think Vince McMahon should be the president.
Vince McMahon. Well, heck, I mean, Kane's the mayor now.
He is, of Knoxville.
Yeah, so, I mean, we're living in a time when anything's possible.
And Jesse the Body Ventura was the governor of...
So we just need a wrestler in office there. They're going to show up one day. Trump's going to show up on stage, and... they're going to announce the Democratic president, and it's John Cena!
It's John Cena, and then he comes out, and he's like waving his... That's horrible.
We're nerding out so bad.
But I don't know who the Democrats would put in there. Do you have an idea of who they might put in there? Joe Biden, maybe? Bernie might get another turn.
Bernie seems like the one for me that's probably going to get one of the nods.
He's so old.
I know he's old, and I was kind of on the Bernie train for a little bit of time when he was in there, but Bernie is the only one I can kind of see as a possibility right now. And so unless some young shotgun out of California comes around or something like that,
that's what I'm saying. I've said this before. I think that if you want to beat Trump, you're going to have to put some young hotshot in there.
Yeah.
Who's just going to sweep people off their feet.
Some 45-year-old
man.
Ready to go to it.
Yeah, hair slicked back, well-dressed, very presentable, looks like an American president.
He's attacked business owners before.
Very patriotic, very aggressive, and just be a Democrat, and he will beat Trump. There's enough Democrats that want Trump out so bad that if the Democrats will go to the polls and you get a young, slick hotshot in there to be your Democratic nominee, even Republicans will cross over. That's how you're going to beat Trump. Other than that, it's going to be hard to beat him.
Yeah. Well, we'll see in 2020 here. So
that's coming up. It'll be here for 2 years.
So yeah, we'll be Friends in the Corner will be doing our hardcore bourbon reviews, just going through bottles by the time 2020 goes around here. It's like, what's this bottle taste like? Just chug a jack and just go.
I remember I did an episode on Off the Cuff on election night when Trump won, and the reaction to people that were in the studio with me, because I was for Trump, and my co-host was for Hillary, and my other guy was like up in the air. He was like an independent, and I remember just the authentic shock in their voice made the episode, because he really didn't think that Trump was going to win. A lot of people didn't.
I thought he was. Unfortunately, I voted against Trump. But, yeah, I thought he was probably. I did not go on social media for 2 weeks after Trump had got elected, because it just the day after I was on it, I was just like, this ain't going well.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, it's like it fights all over the place. Like people fight, people's just chewing each other out, and my Facebook was a war zone.
Yeah,
it was like, God.
Yeah, it's just not worth it.
Yeah,
and everybody all of a sudden becomes a political leader.
Yeah, it's like everyone knows,
or a business manager, or the greatest business mind in the world. They become that overnight.
You disappointed me, America. I was like, what? And there's only so far really a person's vote goes for the presidential election. It's like we're voting to encourage another person to vote.
Yes.
So I'm like, in Kentucky, we kind of know where things are going, or where we swing. Even if we do vote, I'm like, I want this guy. I gave a Democratic vote for my candidate, I kind of knew where the state was going.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, like I know where the city of Lexington...
the
city of Lexington's going blue and the state's going red.
The only county that went red in Kentucky during the election was Jefferson County, Louisville.
Did it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's what I saw the other week at least. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of politics as always. This upcoming election, I think the biggest race locally is going to be Jim Gray and Amy McGrath now.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I've got my stuff confused. Blue's Democrat, right?
Blue is Democrat. Oh, yeah, you said red.
Yeah. Blue, Louisville was the only one to go blue, Democrat, in the entire state of Kentucky.
For Trump?
For a Democrat, for Hillary.
More than Fayette?
Yeah,
Fayette didn't go...
Guys, I am not a political journalist.
You're not Wolf Blitzer.
Yeah, so don't at me, please.
I'm pretty sure that Lexington went blue. I think it's always Louisville, Lexington that are always blue.
Flip-flopping.
Because people are liberal here in this city.
They are.
There's a lot of liberals.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Yeah, you're one of them. But it's okay. The United States of America allows you to be a liberal and allows me to be a conservative and allows us to sit here
and enjoy this.
Enjoy this, do a podcast, and still get along and be great friends.
Exactly.
Well, one more topic for you, Dan, I want to talk about.
All right.
And I got to ask you, do you know how to swim?
I do.
And would you agree that when you swim, it's an exhausting sport?
It can be. I tried to do laps at the Y a couple months ago, and it was like a manatee floating there. So.
You did a what? You did laps?
Tried to do laps, but boy, it wore me out.
Well, I want to talk about this, and I got a funny story here in a second I want to tell. I got a story that I want to talk about, and it's about this woman who fell off of a cruise ship.
Yeah.
And she was on a cruise ship. I mean, the thought of that, think about that. She fell off a cruise ship. I don't know what she was doing, if she was just taking pictures or if she slipped and... I don't know, maybe she was contemplating suicide. Mm-hmm. Who knows? But she fell off a cruise ship and ended up treading water for 10 hours. Nobody knew she fell off, and she stayed alive. But she treaded the water for 10 hours, Dan. I can hardly tread the water for longer than 10 minutes, and she did it for 10 hours. How does she do that?
Just... good leg muscles and good fit.
Well, apparently,
physique, and she sang. And from what I was reading the article, she was singing to keep herself awake.
Keep herself awake and keep herself from getting cold in the water. She sang, which to me would make me think that would take more breath to sing. It would take more work and more energy to sing. Mm-hmm. So, but hey, she had to do what she had to do to live. And when we are in survival mode, we hit that fight or flight mode, and our bodies will do things we didn't think they could do. So maybe if we really were having to stay on top of the water for 10 hours, maybe we could do it. I mean, she stayed on top of the water for 10 hours. And that funny story that I'm going to tell you about, when I was in college, I was going home for the summer, and my mom was pestering me on getting a job. And I did not want to get a job outside of on my summer vacation. I just wanted to sit back and enjoy my summer vacation. Well, I saw a posting for a lifeguard position at the pool in my hometown, and all of my friends were lifeguards. And I said, this is perfect. I can work with them, hang out with them all summer, hang by the pool, get a tan, get paid.
Look good in a swimsuit, impress everybody.
Look good in a swimsuit. Bro, it did not turn out like that. I had to take a lifeguard test. And in order for me to get my license to work at this pool, I had to go pass the test. Now, all of my friends, mind you, they took a different test. They took the local test, which is basically you show up, you get your license. Well, I decided, like a dummy, because I was young and dumb back in the day. This was back in like 19, 20 years old. I thought that I could take a shortcut, not have to drive all the way to Knott County, where I'm from, to take the test. I decided to do it at Morehead State, where I was going to college, take the lifeguard test there. Little did I know that their lifeguard test, they treat it like you're in the Marines, or you're just a Navy. What do they call it?
Navy SEAL.
A Navy SEAL. And I was in there and felt like I was going through Coast Guard training. And Dan, I swam she made us swim a mile right at the beginning. And after that mile, I couldn't hardly tread water. I really thought that I could always stay on top of the water no matter what. I said, well, no way I'm going to let my body go under the water. There's just no way naturally I could let that happen. But if you are tired enough, your body will go under the water because you cannot literally make your hands help you swim. You can't. And that was after a mile. Now, granted, she didn't have to swim a mile. She probably just stayed there treading the water. But equivalent, I say she did that a total of 3 or 4 miles.
And you got to think she's out in the middle of water. There's waves going on and all that stuff. So, I mean, a lot of resistance against her.
A lot of resistance.
Yeah, it's just like...
And just to make a long story short, I couldn't finish the test. The lifeguard teacher didn't even let me finish the test. She said, I don't think this is for you. And I said, bitch, I don't think it's for anybody.
Well,
I don't think this is for anybody that's not trying to be in the Coast Guard.
You're not trying to join the SEALs. You're just trying to get a local lifeguard position.
Job down at the swimming pool.
You're going to tell 5-year-olds they got to get out of the pool.
Exactly. Don't be in the pool. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not.
Make sure the pot machine is stacked.
Bro, she threw like a dummy down in the bottom of the pool, and we had to swim down to the bottom of a 10-foot pool, 12-foot pool, and get the dummy and bring it back up and swim it back to the end of the pool.
You're doing too much.
That's doing way too much.
You're doing too much.
That was way too much. And people started making fun of me that I failed my lifeguard test. I'm like, listen, I failed the lifeguard test, but it was a true military lifeguard test.
What pools are Morehead State students swimming at?
This was like, they have a legit swimming pool. And I'll never forget the lifeguard instructor. She was just a total... Ugh, man, like, she irritated me. But, like, she was just, like, saying, yeah, I don't think this is for you and all this. And I'm just like, yeah. I'd like to see you get in there and swim. But this woman, she did it for 10 hours. Have you ever been in a situation to where you have had to fight or flight? Where you have had to think off the cuff, no pun intended. And, okay, if I don't do this now... I'm going to die. Have you ever been in a situation like that?
Not that I can recall off my head, or one that drastic.
Yeah.
It's just like, but boy, 10 hours in the water there just shredding with nothing.
With nothing. Yeah. And like you said, resistance, no floats, no life jacket.
Yeah. She
had no life jacket on. So...
just the clothes on her back.
And imagine how scary that would be with being in the ocean and nothing surrounding you, complete open space, nothing above, nothing below, to the side, nothing to grab onto. You know, when you're in a swimming pool, you can kind of tiptoe around, grab the sides. Imagine being out in the ocean, and at any given moment, something could crawl up or swim up and grab you.
Well, one other thing you got to think about. So, she fell off a deck of a large boat.
Of a large boat.
And I was looking online at one of these boats. From the feet of the water, from the moment it's in the water, they can be up to 250 feet tall. That's at the top of the mast there. Now, I'm not saying she fell that high, but fell pretty far. So landing on water, which seems soft, but I mean, you've fallen off of a high dive before and felt what that feels like,
and it hurts. It's like a belly splash.
Yeah, so I mean,
it smacks.
You're already shocked because you fell right in the water at a pretty high rate. You know?
It could have broke a bone, tore a muscle. Yeah,
it's like, so I'm like, depending on how rough the current was, is like,
it's amazing that she lived. She obviously didn't break anything because she wouldn't have been able to tread, I don't think. Yeah. But I know what you're saying. It could have been bad from the get go.
Yeah, and
could have been worse.
God bless her. It's amazing to me that it took people. They say that she fell in at 11:45 p.m. and they didn't start searching for her till about 2:00 that morning. So it's amazing to me that for 2.5 hours no one knew she fell off.
Yeah, exactly. But I could see that because sometimes people like to do their own thing. They venture off, and you just assume that they're not off the boat swimming in the water. You just assume they didn't fall off. You just assume that they're off doing something. It's a cruise ship. Right. They could be gambling. They could be eating, drinking, dancing.
There's no details on how she fell off, if she was with friends, how she basically got in the water from there.
Yeah, so. It's amazing to me that they just come to the conclusion that she must have fell off.
Yeah, it's like we searched every nook and cranny of this big old yacht.
And they found her.
Yeah. Thank God. Good, You hear less stories that end that way.
You do. You really do. I mean, you hear about the woman who got sucked out of an airplane. Yeah. You heard about that story a couple months ago. She was sitting on an airplane, got sucked out. And you hear these horror stories.
I mean, you hear a couple years ago, a girl fell off a cliff at Raven Run and died.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And just fell off there, and then the boat had to go get the body, and the boat sunk, and the body sunk, so they had to go search for the body after that.
Unbelievable.
So, I mean, even in our own backyard, you know, stuff like that. So, it's good to hear a more positive side of that. Shouldn't have happened, but positive outcome of it.
Yeah, something actually, they found her, she survived, and it's incredible. And the guys who saved her, I think, speaking of the Coast Guard, I think it was a Coast Guard that found. It was the Croatian Coast Guard rescues the British woman from the.
Yeah, because she was about 30 miles off the coast there.
From the Arctic Ocean, that's what she was in.
Cold.
That's
middle
cold.
of the night, and hey, it was 2 a.m.
That's cold.
Yeah,
that is cold. Well, Dan, man, I want to thank you for stopping in, doing an interview with me here in the Waterstone studio. This is a new studio. This has only been the second episode I've done here in this studio.
Well, I feel so honored. You were my second episode, and now I'm yours in a new studio.
Exactly, and this is the main studio, so you're one of the first people to see it. You actually are the first person other than me to see it live. So, yeah, I want to thank you for stopping in, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on here, and I love... one of the influences I've had on this podcast has been from Off the Cuff here. So hopefully as we continue to grow, we catch up to you guys, and we'll be at 200 episodes right when you're at 500. So
but then that means a lot, and that really sets a fire under my feet that you got inspired from Off the Cuff, or we were just even just a little bit of inspiration for you to start your podcast, because I think that like you said, Lexington's a supportive community. I think as long as we can be supportive, help each other out, there's no reason, man. If there's a guest that you listen to me interview and that you want to interview them and you want their contact information, hit me up.
Yeah.
I'll get it for you.
Absolutely.
Because like I said, you can interview the same person, but 2 people can interview that person. It's going to be 2 different interviews. That's just how it goes.
Right.
We're 2 different personalities. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave the floor, open mic to Dan, to give one last plug to his podcast, Friends in the Corner, and to say anything else he wants to say before we sign off. Dan, the mic is yours.
All right, guys. Well, you can follow Friends in the Corner podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at FITC Podcast. We are on 5 different sites that you can listen to us to. We're on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube. So you can listen to us every week. We release a show every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. So be sure to check us out on there. And the last thing I want to say is this: as we are a young podcast, we were talking about this earlier, we're still growing, we're still having ideas. If you have an idea for the show, if you maybe want to even be on the show, if you got an idea you want to pitch to me, you can always email me at friendsinthecornerpodcast@gmail.com. That's friendsinthecorner, all together lowercase, @gmail.com. I am open to all suggestions, so please do so. And always be sure to check us out on any of our media platforms as well. And be sure to check out Mr. Adam Banks on Off the Cuff as well. So thank you so much, Adam, for the time.
No problem. Dan Pauley, everybody, Friends in the Corner podcast. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the interview that was just given to you by me to Dan Pauley, host of Friends in the Corner podcast. Check out his podcast on all social media outlets. You heard him say where they were. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of Off the Cuff. I'm Adam Banks. We will see you in the next episode.
Nací un día de junio del año 77, planeta Mercurio y el año de la serpiente. Signo patente tatuado y en mi frente que en el vientre de mi madre marcaba el paso siguiente. Nacer, llorar sin anestesia en la camilla.